Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Doing something totally different today. Still in the realm of adventure, but today well, let me back up. Let's say this. I've interviewed a lot of tour operators, a lot of journalists, a lot of people that are really directly involved in working in adventure tourism. Well, my guest today doesn't quite fit that mold. But even better, it's my father. So I'm interviewing Jason Elkins, my father, for the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Super excited. So, Dad, happy to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, son. It's quite a unique pleasure because in a lot of ways, we share a lot of common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you were one of the first people to write a review for the podcast way back. Way back about a year and a half ago or so. And ever since then, I thought, I really need to get Dad on here at some point to have a conversation and discuss some of the cool adventures that we shared together as I was growing up. And I know you had some adventures before I came along. So I want to capture some of those on recording so we can share it with other family members as well. And as well as my great listeners here on the show. So thanks for agreeing to do this. It's going to be fun.
It'll be fun. Yeah.
I have no plan. Before I hit the record button, I told you it's just a conversation. We're just going to do that. So, but there's some things that I know kind of shaped me, again, that happened while I was growing up, but also before I was ever born. And I remember some of the stories that you and your parents would share about kind of your childhood. And I thought we'd actually start there. So I don't know how far back you want to go. And, I guess the thing that always intrigued me was just you had a unique childhood. You had a pet bobcat in the house, and I thought that was pretty cool. But we're going to start with, where did you grow up, Dad?
Where did I grow up? Physically, I grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming. I was born there, and that was my home residence for a very long time. And it was a good place. It offered a lot of opportunity for adventure and camping in the mountains and the outdoors. So I think that environment helped foster the idea of adventure. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about adventure, and you, of course, think about it a lot. You've been in the adventure business for quite a while, from Orvis and Ballooning and clear to where you're at. And all of your people that you interview are adventure providers. And the whole concept of adventure, I think, is taken kind of shallow by a lot of people. It's like, oh, let's go have an adventure. But adventure is, I think, deeper than that. It is what takes you from your comfort view of the world. We all have a view or a window, a filter of the world. And almost by definition, adventure is when we step outside of that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes voluntarily and sometimes not voluntarily. But I think by stepping outside of that comfort area into whatever adventure you're going to undertake is not so much as some people might say, well, it's an adrenaline rush or, it's an excitement. I think actually it's a growth. As you expand your window of comfort and whatever adventure it is, whether it's a serious physical one or a mind expanding adventure through the jungle or whatever, each of those adventures has a way of changing you a little bit. And it
As
seems
I was just going to say, as I listen to you, Dad, if someone were to go back and listen to all the episodes, they would hear that same voice and that same, because we talk about, adventure is on what's on the other side of your comfort zone, or growth is what's on the other side of your comfort zone. And whether that's eating a scorpion on the streets in Thailand, or climbing a mountain, or just any number of things. So that really resonates. And I know there's a connection here. I remember growing up, probably the most common phrase, or the phrase that stuck with me, was another typical Elkins adventure.
Yeah, that was
You've
dubbed
heard
on
that
me
a few
by
times.
a good friend of mine, Jerry Mark, came up with that after many adventures we had. But yeah, my adventures were not as well scripted as probably your adventure travel hosts like their adventures to be. Ours were kind of ragtag, and it's like, oh well, let's go rappel off a Steamboat Rock, or let's do a winter ski trip down the Bighorns through the Little Horn Canyon, or they were kind of like, yeah, let's go do it and see if we can survive. So yeah, it's always good to survive another Elkins adventure, and you have been having years of Elkins adventures. So yeah,
There were times that I remember as a child thinking, I'm not sure, like, this is normal. I don't think we should be here. I'm sure my mom felt that way. We could touch on that or not. I'm not sure if we want to go there. She might listen to this. But I have so many memories of just doing these things that definitely felt unscripted. That's a really good term for it. Sometimes wondering if we would survive it. But we always did. And I think that that's part of who I am now. We did those things. And one thing I remember is we took a trip to Mexico. I think you kind of loaded us all in the van, and you had the big utility trailer. So we and some friends of yours and some other kids probably rode half the way in the trailer. I don't remember if you let us ride in the trailer or not, but I remember thinking we did. Maybe we shouldn't discuss that, but
well, we did not let you kids ride in the trailer. We had the van, and you could all sleep in it. And there was very little traveling in the trailer. I did some. I think Dawn did some, but yeah, it was a weekend trip. We went down to Six Flags over Texas for the weekend, and like 1,000 miles. Left Thursday night, drove all the way there, and did big adventures, and yeah.
well, that was one of the trips. But I remember we also went more to California. So it was the Disneyland, and then we crossed into Mexico.
Yeah.
And what I remember, there's those trips, then the summers, Justin, my brother, and I, the guy, would spend our summers with you. And I remember we'd come back to school, and usually that first day back at school, and, first grade, second grade, third grade, or whatever it was. And the teacher's like, oh, well, tell the class what you did this summer. And everybody would take turns. And I would just say some things that just sounded completely random. And I believe that at one point the teacher called Mom and said, your kid's great. He's, super smart kid, da, 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 da. But he has a little problem with honesty. She's like, well, what do you mean? Well, he came back and he said he was, I don't know, rappelling off of cliffs, or going caving, or, going to Mexico for the weekend and all this. And she was just absolutely convinced that I was making that stuff up. And I think, when I was able to understand that story, I realized, oh, geez, maybe my childhood was a little different than some of the other kids.
It was a complex situation, because there wasn't a lot of stability in my summers. The way my life was going, it's like, well, I want to take you guys with me and do the things I do. And it sort of preempted you from, high school, well, grade school sports and, your friends through the summer. It kind of pulled you out of a normal life, more normal life that you lived with your mother, and threw you into like 2.5 months of, like you say, gosh, I wonder if we're going to live through this.
When you said 2.5 months, the first word that popped in my head was chaos, but I'm not sure, but in a good way, I mean, it might have been a little bit chaotic. Maybe spontaneous is a much better word, or adventurous is obviously, a good
So
word.
Do you remember the day we went to Billy Creek Cave up in the Bighorns above Buffalo?
I do, and that's we rappelled down into the cave. That cave.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a log across the pit entrance, and I rappelled you down one side and Justin down the other side so that the rope remained hanging over the log. And then I hooked into it and did a double line rappel down. And we explored the first time I'd ever been in there. It was an interesting cave. It was kind of, like a maze. I was like, okay, well, do we go here or do we go there? And we wandered around in it for quite a while and saw a lot of pretty things. But when it came time to get out, my idea was, I'd sort of belay you up, sort of lift you up. There was no way to really free climb it because it was a dome-shaped bowl that we rappelled down into. But I got out and I was able to pull Justin out pretty easily, but I couldn't pull you out. So, you're in the bottom and Justin and I are in the top and it's getting dark and it's like, wow, this one will be interesting.
I don't remember feeling like, you probably weren't sharing with me, Jason. I'm not sure how I'm going to get you out.
No, I try not to do that. Speaking of that, though, flying in Williamsport, when we flew over that mountain and got into a little situation with the cloud bank and a rapid descent down over the mountain, is one of the few times I've actually told people, is like, I think we're in big trouble. Normally I don't do that.
I do remember that. And I think for our listeners at this point, it will give them kind of an idea, because we're talking about a bunch of different things and we did a bunch of different things. It's hard to kind of summarize it at all, but maybe I'll share kind of my perspective of what I thought happened, and then you can jump in and correct me where I'm mistaken. But obviously, you and Mom weren't together forever. You were together when we were young, and we're doing some of those activities, and would take us as young kids to go do those things. I have a few memories of that. And then we'd spend some summers with you, and then you were working as a CPA, or I guess you were the CFO for a mining company. Is that right? Or not a CFO, but you tell the story. What I remember is you were working and then you convinced the state of Wyoming to do a special project. Actually, we need to start a little bit before that. You were working, you and your buddies heard about ballooning. And so let's start there. You're working.
Okay,
Got two young kids.
We'll roll back to the real world, or the world that I escaped from. I did get a degree in accounting. I was a CPA, and I worked as a CPA for a number of years. In fact, that was probably a big first adventure for you guys. Your mother and I took you guys to Alaska. We drove up the Alcan in November. We saw temperatures 70 below zero in Tok Junction. You were 2, and Justin was 1. So I went up there for an accounting job, a CPA job, and we didn't stay there. We came back, and then I worked for some local CPAs in Sheridan, Wyoming, and then I got a job with NERCO, which was a mining holding company, a subsidiary of Pacific Power and Light. And then the balloon idea come along. Some friends of mine that we did adventures, we decided to get a hot air balloon. None of us knew how to fly it, of course. And 8 of us went together and purchased this hot air balloon and started learning to fly. And that was right around the time that your mother and I got divorced. Imagine that. But anyway, so
Sure, that had no influence on it whatsoever.
yeah. So anyway, that was, and at the time I was doing a lot of caving. I was a pretty serious cave explorer. The hot air ballooning was just another adventure that opened another window into my life that ended up being a large enough window to escape through. And so I left that life of being an accountant and became a balloon barnstormer and traveled around the country barnstorming balloons or going from place to place and selling rides. So that was probably, in fact, you and Justin were my first passengers when I got my license in the balloon, which was another good adventure. I'm sure you remember that one.
I do remember that.
Yeah, that was an eye opener. But yeah, so that was the transitional period from going to having a home in Sheridan and having you guys in the summer to quitting my job in Sheridan and basically living in the front of a truck with a dog and you two during the summer. So I'm sure you remember many, many miles, the 4 of us in the front of a truck.
The 4 of us, and I specifically remember a trip. We were just leaving Sheridan to head back east to go do some balloon festivals, and about 30 miles. You know, this was probably a 1,200 mile trip, and about 30 miles after it started, you picked up a hitchhiker because you thought you might need some help driving, and Justin and I were too young to help drive. So we picked up the hitchhiker, and he was just kind of open-ended about, he's like, well, wherever you're going, I'll go with you. And I think he went all the way to Pennsylvania with us. And
I think we were probably in Minnesota, big rainstorm, and we were all in the front of the truck.
And this wasn't a crew cab pickup. This was just a standard
this is
pickup.
A single bench seat, yeah. So, and we'd been that way for the better part of a day because the weather was really pretty bad. And we finally came to a big overpass where the rain, you get out of the rain. And he said, I think I'd like out here. And I couldn't blame him, but yeah, he got out in the middle of a rainstorm under an overpass and we continued our trip. But yeah, he rode with us for quite a bit of that distance.
Well, a lot of fun. So. When you mentioned, quit your job, sell your stuff, living in the front of a pickup, it's hard for that not to resonate for me because many of the listeners know, and you know, that I kind of quit the job, sold my stuff, and now I live in an Airbnb, different Airbnb every week, and everything I own is in my suitcase. So I wonder how I might have been influenced to go that direction.
And you're doing that adventurously. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're living in Chicago, just hanging out there. You have the adventure of travel. Your window to the world around you grows all the time. Mm-hmm. And, I assume, well, I can tell by the way you live, you've come to that divide also. You either have material things or you have adventure. It's really hard to have both because your material things start locking in your view of the world. They hold you back. The adventure pulls you away from those things, and it's more about the experience of growing through the different adventures than it is about accumulating. And I say that after now I've been at this ranch here for 30 years and I've accumulated a lot because you have to have it because you can't go to the store. And I'm in the process of getting rid of everything, which reminds me I have several barrels of things that are yours. when you say you live out of a suitcase.
I knew you'd slide that into the conversation. I'm pretty sure last time we discussed this, I said, Dad, it's not really mine anymore.
I don't want it.
It's not mine anymore. Please don't burden me with that. I remember stories. Somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody said that she was, I think maybe high school, something like that. And her dad traveled a lot. And every time he'd go someplace, he'd like bring her a rock. So she had all these rocks that her dad had picked up along the way and brought her. And I thought, and there's something to that. It's like, what are you trying to tell your kid when you're out traveling, you bring them back rocks that they're going to feel like they can never get rid of because my dad gave me this rock. So are you going to carry around this rock? What's the motive behind giving your kid rocks? No judgment, but I just remember thinking, I've got some things, or I had some things that I accumulated over the years and it was hard to let go of it. So a big box of rocks is a really good example of like, how do I get rid of this? My dad gave it to me. What if something happens to him and he's no longer around and I can't get rid of the rocks? I don't know.
Rocks.
I think a lot of people face that they have too many things that makes it hard to move or downsize or whatever. And I'd heard someone say, it's not the things that we're attached to, it's the memories that they create or, when we see them. And
they're in a sense, they're like a photograph.
Yeah. Well, and that was this guy's.
Photograph's a lot easier to pack around.
Yeah, that's what this guy's angle was like. We all have cell phones now. We can probably have as many pictures as we want on our cell phone. So take those things, take a picture of them, and then get rid of them. Give them away, whatever, because it's not the thing, it's the memory that's associated with it. That's easy to say. I get that, for some people that's not so easy to actually do. Fortunately, I got to the point where I was able to do it because it's just so much easier to live in Airbnbs when you're not carrying around a box of rocks. But anyway,
my dad, two of the things that he left me, which I can't get rid of yet. I'm looking forward to the day, but it's a post hole auger and a digging bar. I spent so much of my childhood watching him use them and helping what little bit a little guy can do. But then I inherited them and dug 500 fence posts, So it's like they're great. I love them, and I am tired of digging fence post holes. So I was kind of hoping I could pass them on to you, but I don't know.
I'm not digging any fence posts for a long time, I hope. Oh boy. So anyway, let's go back. So you're doing the ballooning barnstorming thing. Justin and I are traveling in the front of the pickup with you. We've got the hot air balloon wrapped up in the back of the pickup truck with a couple barrels. That's kind of our traveling supplies or whatever.
That's luggage.
And to describe the pickup, the one I probably feel the strongest connection with was yellow. I'm sure it was a Ford pickup, and you had a big a stock rack. And for those of our listeners that can't imagine what that is, imagine a pickup truck driving down the road with a cow in the back of it. So imagine maybe the thing that looks like a fence or something around the back of a pickup truck to keep the cow from climbing out when they stop to get gas. Yep. That's a stock rack. Cattle rack. Yep. And so we spent our summers traveling that way when the weather was nice. Again, this is something you don't do anymore, but when the weather was nice, Justin and I would be out in the back of the truck, just enjoying the wind or sleeping on top of the balloon or whatever with the stock rack around it. So we weren't going to fall out, and the dog.
And if it got really, really harsh, the dog got to come up front.
Yep. And yeah, exactly. I remember there were times we'd be at an event and there were just few more, more people in the vehicle or whatever. And there was limited space. And I remember a few times that, well, the dog needs to come up front because she's cold, and you guys can put on a coat. We can bundle you up. She can't. So we're letting the dog ride up front. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have been able to ride up front, but it was just one of those memories.
It's an adjustment. Yeah. What's his priority?
Yeah. And then of course we'd come home after every summer and tell mom about the hours we spent in the back of the pickup cruising down the freeway or the balloon rides. One of the things I remember, we go to the festival and, you were kind of financing all this by selling rides, or sometimes you had sponsors that you were, needed to fly at these festivals. So it wasn't always that Justin and I were able to be in the balloon every time. We did a lot, but it wasn't always a given. But I remember sometimes you're probably like, I don't think we need to air this, Jason, later on after we have this conversation. But anyway, I remember sometimes that it was like, well, it's a little too windy to take paying passengers, a little too windy to take the sponsors, but you had the skill set to have the flight. And I believe what you always told me is you wanted me to learn how to manage windy landings, especially when I started learning to fly. But I just remember quite a few times it's like, well, no, I think it's too windy. And then you'd turn and look at me and say, Jason, get in the basket. That's the way I remember it. I don't know. Maybe it only happened once, but it left a mark. A few.
As one of my philosophies as a balloon pilot, and perhaps as anything else I do, is you want to know where your limits are, because you don't want to go beyond your limit. But if you don't know where it is, you maybe could go a lot farther than you're going and not be at your limit. But when you are flying a balloon, there is a lot of responsibility, and you don't have control over the weather. And forecasts back then, forecasts now are pretty incredible, but 30 years ago, they weren't quite so good. And so it's like you can't learn to do a windy landing if you're not flying in the wind. Mm-hmm. You can think about it and you can figure out what you would do, but you can't practice it without the wind. So you can't take new people that are, don't know what they're getting into, they're not familiar with it. I would always make the determination that, I think this is doable, we're going to be fine, but you got to do it to learn. So as you started learning, and also a balloon needs to be weighted properly. You know this, you're a very good balloon pilot. If you're flying too light, it doesn't control the same. You lose a margin of control because your envelope can fold a little and you lose more heat, and then it changes your equilibrium. So you want it loaded properly when you're flying in less than ideal conditions, but you can't load it with the newbies. Your sons, sure.
And
but
what's worse is going to happen if we get scratched or bruised? We might complain a little bit, but tell our mom about it. But
yeah. But it's that adventure.
Yeah,
it expanded your view of the world that you live in. You and Justin both became incredibly good pilots, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And it's because you were exposed to a lot and you grew to embrace it.
There was in the ballooning, but also, obviously in life as well, because that's where these things go, is that, I met a pilot at a balloon festival that you knew. I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now, and I know I've shared this with you before, but he was talking about one of the things about ballooning is, when you launch a balloon, you generally don't know where you're going to land. It's one of the few kind of, if you want to call it I don't like to call it's not really a transportation tool, but if you think of airplanes, helicopters, cars, horses, whatever things you might get on to go someplace.
Yeah, you have a destination in mind.
Yeah, you have a destination in mind. You're going to another airport. You're going somewhere specifically. Where with the balloon, it's you launch, you know you're going downwind generally, but there's different wind layers going different directions. So you don't necessarily have a destination. So you take this 80, 80 feet, 8-story tall balloon on a basket, and you put some passengers in it that may be paying passengers. They may be your crew, friends, whatever, but they don't fly balloons. They're not going to take over the controls. No matter how many times they might have seen a movie or whatever, there's things out there, but they get in and you take off responsible for them and legitimately can't say where you're going.
Well,
and it's that ability. And what he was sharing was, he's like, I don't know where I'm going to land, but I have ability, or I have faith in my ability to figure it out along the way. That was a big thing. Faith in your ability to figure it out along the way. Obviously applies to ballooning, but oh my gosh, doesn't that apply to so many things in life? There's so many things that people will not launch because they need to know where they're going before they take off. And if you can launch a project, launch a decision, launch a relationship, launch whatever it is, and have faith in your ability to figure it out along the way, you're much more likely to launch. And I think that's been
and
the
realize you're going to have to make a lot of decisions, and not all of them will be good. And when you make a bad one, you need to change it, And you develop a faith in yourself that you can do things, but you have to do the things to get the faith. And in the process of doing the things, some of them don't work out quite as well as you'd have liked, but yeah.
So we can use
that
metaphor.
A long time, It's like,
Well,
how'd I luck out through that?
Well, we talk about, getting in the balloon when the conditions are not dangerous, but less than ideal, or, challenging. They're going to push the envelope a little bit, literally. For those that didn't get the pun, the envelope of the balloon.
Sometimes, yeah.
But being able to climb in the basket. Well, let me back up. Having a parent or a mentor encourage you to climb into the basket, knowing that you're going to be pushed, the limits are going to be pushed a little bit, and that you're going to be put outside your comfort zone, and then you survive it. Hopefully you survive it. And it teaches that message that, oh my gosh, I can get outside my comfort zone and survive it and probably have a pretty cool experience.
Well, and learn from it. How old were you when you soloed?
14.
14, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember you many years after that, and Jordan, your daughter, comes along, and you go, Dad, how could you let me go by myself in a balloon at 14 when my daughter wants to drive a car around the block and she's 16 and it scares me?
Yeah, I remember saying that.
Yeah, I remember that. And it's like, because I had faith, because you had the experiences, you had gotten in the balloon, you had an expanded knowledge of how to work it, and the conditions were good, and the instructions were precise. You're not going to take off for hours on end, but and parenting is a difficult thing, as you know. What do you teach? How do you teach it? Full well realizing that you're really not teaching. You're maybe providing the opportunity to learn. And then it's like, well, what do you want them to learn? And I'm pretty proud of the fact that you guys have learned to live, not to be afraid of living, and not to be in the rut or seeking material gain above the experience of life, I think you guys did pretty good, and I don't take credit for it. I mean, your mother had an awful lot to do with it. I did provide a lot of adventure, which changed your window of the world.
And
But
that's, yeah, I appreciate that. And that's, because I have interesting people on the show that are doing interesting things, a lot of similarities. A lot of them have parents that encouraged them to take risks and to take chances and to, go out, and quite a few of them traveled to other countries alone when they were younger, for some sort of exchange program, or they were exposed to these things that a lot of parents have a real hard time with,
yeah,
that really aren't going to encourage their kids to do that. I've got many of the guests on the show, went to school, got a degree, and then became a ski instructor,
yeah,
with their degree, or they became a guide, an overland guide in Africa, or they went away, to explore the world. And that's all super, super cool. And it's because their parents instilled something two ways. Either they instilled the confidence and the desire to go explore and push their boundaries, or they were so domineering and controlling that the person
yeah,
just said, screw this, I'm out of here. There's a
yeah.
few of both. But anyway, I appreciate that you took the first approach of encouraging us to go out there, push our boundaries, and be exposed to those things. So it's very cool. When you so when that part of the barnstorming ballooning ended, you still did some ballooning stuff. It's been a part of your life continuously. You still, I know you're spending time with my brother, flying with him. He's a commercial pilot as well. And you've done some instruction for some of his friends. And so you're still involved in that. But I do want to
Yeah.
touch on, go ahead.
No, I'm
Uh,
involved.
I wanted to touch on kind of the other part of your life. You mentioned the ranch. You said, I've been here for about 30 years now. So let's talk about the ranch, because I know that that's a big part of your life, and you're in a transition there around the ranch. So maybe somebody is hearing this, thinks, man, I need to go check that place out. It sounds pretty cool. So tell us about what in the heck made you decide to buy this little piece of property in the middle of nowhere. And then how did you get from that point to where you are now?
Well, that is interesting. It does go back a bit. Do you have things or do you do things? And when I grew up, I never really wanted to own a piece of land because you're kind of stuck there, and people are all around you, and you're anchored. So I went on the road ballooning, barnstorming, just living in the truck, and then of course I fall in love with another woman, and we get married, and we both are traveling around living in the truck, and it's great. Life is good, and as women can be more sensible than men, the idea of the fact that, well, someday we're going to get old, which I never thought I would, so that sounded ridiculous. But anyway, we're going to need a nest. We're going to want to be somewhere. We're going to need a nest. So as we traveled around, we kind of looked for nesting places. But by then, land values had already skyrocketed in Wyoming and Montana, and Arizona, as beautiful as it is hostile ground. It's not user friendly, and New Mexico looked pretty good, but still, it's you're buying a place, and we by accident actually found this place. When you say in the middle of nowhere, it literally is. It is probably the most remote spot in the continental United States. My nearest neighbor, who was 20 miles away, isn't there anymore. No one's there. So my nearest neighbor now is probably 50 miles away. So it's every day is just an adventure seeing the world the way the world is without people in it. And it's changes your pace. It allows you to think. You know, of course we've got internet, and I could go online and check all kinds of things, but I haven't had a television. I haven't been on Facebook for 15 years probably. I quit all that.
I didn't think you ever were on Facebook. I'm
There
surprised
was
to
a
hear that
brief
you ever.
time. There was a brief time, and just before my divorce from my second wife, it's like, I don't want anything of this. I just it pollutes what I consider a pristine, nice world in my mind. I just don't have time for my mind to go there when my mind can be, watching the animals and of course there's a lot of construction involved if you live off the grid in the middle of nowhere. So I used to, a long time ago, I was a carpenter's apprentice and spent a whole summer working really hard with the carpenter building a house, and learned and realized I didn't want to ever do that again. So I spent the last 30 years doing exactly that. Because if you want to live in a house in the middle of nowhere, you have to build it. Because, other than friends and family, I've had a lot of friends and family, a lot come and help me do a lot of the stuff. But you don't hire a carpenter, and you don't hire a plumber, and you don't hire an electrician to come to the middle of nowhere, because if they're any good, they aren't going to do that. They're working somewhere else, with the exception of my friends. I have a friend who is, a licensed electrician. I have one that's a plumber. I have one that does concrete, So all the things you need to have done, I had friends come help me do and learn it. But yeah, so I've spent a long period of time building what I think is an incredible place. I would never leave if I figured I was going to live forever, But I know I'm not, and I'm going to have to leave someday at some point. And so, I made the decision a couple of years ago that I've loved it, and it's like ballooning. I've been flying. I've flown for 50 years, but things change, and you need to transition. You transition out. So I'm in the transition from the ranch to writing. I want to write, which is kind of strange because I hardly ever read. But
I'm a little surprised to hear you say that. I think this is the first time I've ever heard you say you want to write. I do remember you reading, though.
Yeah. I got an idea for a science fiction book.
Yeah?
Which is really bizarre in my mind because I'd never read science fiction. I don't have anything against it, but reading wasn't my thing, and other people's stories wasn't my thing. But so I want to write this book just because I want the challenge of trying to figure out how you pull something together, how you create characters out of the air that work and go and do stuff. So it's like, okay, I can keep myself mentally satisfied doing that. So
Right.
I think that's
Cool.
a big transition. If I quit doing what I'm doing, I got to fill it with something else. And so I think that'll
Well,
be
when you publish the book, we'll come back and we'll just discuss the book because I'm fascinated by that. This is the first time I've heard of this, so we need to chat more. One of the things you touched on, though,
I am writing a diary autobiography, and I actually have made big progress on that. I'm a couple hundred pages into it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to learning more about that. That's it's kind of a big surprise. Hey, one of the things that you touched on was being out in the middle of nowhere, building a place in the middle of nowhere. How do you get carpenters and this, that, or plumbers, but you've got friends that have pitched in. So something that's always been interesting to me is that you are one of the most social people I know in many ways. As far as when I was growing up, every town we went to, you had a group of friends, either people you already knew or you made friends instantly. You showed up, there were, 20, 30, 40 people that just seemed to want to hang around all the time. And I just recall those days as you having tons of friends everywhere. And we still do. I mean, most of those friendships were not just we're in town this weekend. These are friendships that continued. And then many of them came out to the land and helped you build the house and did different projects or just spent time there. I remember people who would take their vacation time, go to your place and help you build the house or dig a root cellar or whatever. And it's just always been fascinating because when I tell people my dad lives in the middle of nowhere, he's 150 miles or whatever from the nearest stoplight, immediately in my head, I think 180 miles. Yeah. In my head or based on some of their responses, they're like, oh, he sounds like a real hermit. He sounds like all these different words and names you might use to describe someone that wants to get as far away from people as humanly possible. And then I'm like, no, he's one of the most outgoing people I know. He has more friends than I can imagine. And where do you think that came from? I mean, what are your thoughts? I don't know. I've always thought it was interesting and I've never really asked you about it. So,
Well, I do like friends, and I'm blessed to have a lot of friends. And traveling around the country, they're all spread out. And interestingly, I do believe that if we lived next door to each other, in probably 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, we wouldn't even talk to each other.
Oh, okay.
But we share a lot of common traits. All of my friends are wonderful people. They're honest to a T. They got the biggest hearts of anybody I know. And when we see each other, we enjoy the good in each other. And we don't have to be around each other when things aren't so good. It's like, God damn, Elkins doesn't mow his yard again. Why? What's wrong with him? He doesn't like to shovel the snow, So it's easier to have close friends at a distance, I think, than to have them next door. So I think that explains a lot why we're still tight. I mean, my friends from as far back as I can remember are still my friends. And we see each other when we can. But as far as the other 8 billion people living on the planet, I don't feel compelled to be around them. It's not that I dislike them. They just don't, they're not bringing value into my life as much as, the sunsets here. Misty and I sat on the swing on the front porch and watched the sunset, and the wild horses come in, and, it's salve for the soul to be in this kind of an environment. It's just incredible. And, when we go out to our cowboy hot tub and float in the hot water and look at the stars, we feel like we're the luckiest people on the planet because we're seeing there's absolutely zero light pollution where we live. None. There's not a radio tower. There is not a neighbor's house that you can see in the mountain 20 miles away. There's nothing. So the night skies are just like they're a treat. And we get them every night. So it's just wonderful. So I go to a city and I am becoming more reclusive. I go to a town and, like you mentioned that you're still feeling a little bit like an outsider in your new location. It's like, I've lived here for 30 years. I go to Eureka, where my post office box is, 70 miles away, and I feel like an outsider. Mm-hmm. It's like a town that's got 400 people in it. I've lived here 30 years, and I bet I don't know 5 of them. You know, it's and that's okay. They don't need me, and I'm fine. So that's interesting.
It's a very unique place. As you've reminded me, on occasion, I don't visit enough, and I agree. And but when I have been there, it is just like you describe. I mean, you can see the sky. Like, I've been fortunate to visit a lot of places, and just to be at your place and to look up and see the sky in that much detail, and just look out across the valley, and just, it's so peaceful. And honestly, maybe for me, it's almost even too peaceful, to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
think that's common for a lot of people. They aren't comfortable with, we call it isolation. I don't feel isolated at all, but they want more background activity.
yeah, yep. And I think that's even more common now with all of the quick access to dopamine and the cell phones and the social media. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I know I get sucked into it. I can say that I'm all about the experiences and the culture and this. And then I find myself on my phone doom scrolling for 2 hours. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got the same thing going on. And so you've got all these things going on. And then you go to a place where there's stuff. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but you don't get that type of, I mean, you've got internet, so I guess you could go sit there and just scroll, but why would you? But it's just a bit different. And I like that. I appreciate that, but I've got a limited attention span. I guess. I don't know. So, all right. Very cool. So we discussed a bunch of things. There's so many things that I want to continue. I think we should do a whole father-son series of podcast episodes, because I've got so many stories and things that come to mind, but I realize, oh geez, that would take 8 hours to cover all of them. I really just want to have this conversation, get the conversation started. Maybe we make this a more routine type of thing. But Dad, what do I need to ask you? What did I forget to ask you? What do you want to make sure that our listeners, because I know your friends are going to hear this. As soon as I publish this, you've got a lot of friends on social media that every time I post anything related to you, oh my gosh, how's your dad doing? Or I'm going to see him in a month, or I met him here, I met him there. So when I publish this, they're going to listen to this. So what do you want to make sure we say before we go?
Well, I'm still vertical. So that's good. Yeah, well, I'm in a great relationship with a high school classmate. We graduated together, and a year ago at our 55th class reunion, we reconnected. And I don't know if you know this, a bit of trivia connection, but the Wyoming balloon, when I made the proposal to the state, I had a painting that I took to visually show what I was talking about with the bucking horse and the Wyoming, and a beautiful balloon that was painted from the idea before the balloon ever existed. Well, Misty is the artist that painted that. So, and she's with me now.
That's very cool. I did know that, but some of our listeners, some of your friends that might not actually know that backstory. So that's very cool. And actually, we didn't really touch on the whole connection with Wyoming. Born and raised in Wyoming, so was I.
So was Justin.
And you were able to leave your job as an accountant. My understanding of the story is because you convinced the state of Wyoming to, I don't know all the details, we don't want to go into that, but you convinced them to participate in a project where a balloon would be designed and you would travel around with it to promote tourism to the state of Wyoming. And so that's the balloon you're describing when you talk about the painting that Misty did of the balloon,
there was
right?
a lot of misunderstanding there, but basically what it was a contract for services. I agreed to get a balloon, based on that design that I presented to him, and I would buy it myself. I would get the balloon, and they would contract a number of events over a course of 3 years. So they never paid me to get a balloon or to travel or to take it anywhere. They never reimbursed any of my expenses. What they did was they contracted for my service with the balloon. So I'd go to various events around the state, and some events not in the state, but where they thought it would be lucrative to have the balloon promoted. So, yeah, but that I was able to take their agreement to do these events, take that to the bank to get a loan, because that showed that I would have revenue to be able to pay the note. So, yeah, it was worked out pretty good. And then one day, quit my job and never went back.
Yeah, it was, so that was the balloon that, you know, we were traveling with in the back of the pickup truck, sleeping on top of. It was
1985. That's when we hit the road with it.
It was such a fun experience because we'd show up at these festivals, and for some reason, just something about that balloon, something about probably your personality and just that. I mean, I recall you wearing cowboy hats and chaps and stuff like that. I don't think you wore chaps all the time, but I remember
I was Western.
It was kind of, I don't know, the costume. Your grandkids still think of you as a cowboy. I do as well, and I know a lot of your friends do. But it was fun to show up at a balloon festival, maybe in upstate New York, with the Wyoming balloon with a big bucking horse on the side of it, and the pilot that, you know, looked like he was right out of the old Western movies or whatever, flying the balloon, and it was just a lot of fun. So
it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So,
and I think that's important to have good memories to look back on, because man, the older you get, all that you have left are your memories. And that provided a lot of good ones.
Yeah. Well, it was fun to have this conversation because it brought up a lot of good memories, and there's so many more that we didn't even touch on, probably a few that we shouldn't touch on.
Well, I'll tell you what, this next spring, so we've got a winter home now. We go back to Sheridan and live at Misty's in the winter, and we're staying out here in the summer until the place sells. But in the winter, I'm going to go back and try and maybe wrap up my diary autobiography, and I'll send you a editing copy, a early preview, and that might then go, oh yeah, we do need to talk about that or something. You know,
I'll just take it right to my therapist, okay? I'll just
Yeah,
right there.
Now
Sit
you
down with her.
understand.
We can read it together, and she's like, "Wow, I've never had a client bring me such an owner's manual to all of your emotional problems."
Okay. I think we can go to Oprah with this now. Of course, I guess Oprah's not around anymore. I don't know.
I just upload it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT can help me figure out what's wrong. Why am I the way I am? Anyway, I value the way I am. It doesn't mean it's always been easy, but that get in the basket, you know, and the ability to figure shit out along the way is a really valuable thing that you shared with me. So thank you for that. And let's do this again sometime.
Yes, I cannot make promises, but I would love, when this place sells, to meet you wherever you are.
Sounds good. I
And
look
I hope
forward to
you
it.
start working a diary type of thing, because you have a lot of worldly experience that, you know, and when you were young, you'd been in every state in the Union before you graduated high school. Then you were in France and Australia, and those are nothing compared to what you've been doing the last 5 years. It's like you're just, how many
been a good
countries
adventure.
haven't you been to?
Well, there's more that I have not been to. That's for sure. And there's so many on the list. But we're doing this call. I'm here in Tbilisi, Georgia, the country of Georgia. I feel like I always need to say the country. Well, you're there in Nevada, and my challenge is every time I show up somewhere, I look at the map and I'm like, well, okay, look what's so close. Iran is really close by, Kazakhstan, Russia. Look at all these amazing places I can go visit. I can't tell my parents that. So forget I said.
Please don't. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been an adventure, and I absolutely can't really imagine having done what I've done over the last 52 now, over the last 40 years, because I started learning to fly balloons when I was 12. So if I just use that as a point of, it's not where it all started, but it kind of feels sometimes like that. So the opportunities that I've had over the last 40 years as a result of that have been pretty incredible. So thanks, Dad.
Well, thank you. I love you a lot. I think
Love you too.
know that. And
I do.
real FaceTime somewhere. Real FaceTime whenever we can.
All right. Sounds good. And to all of our listeners that are still here with us, I know this was a little different than what we've done in the past, but it was a real special moment for me. And I trust that you got some good takeaways, or at least an interesting story. And Dad, thanks for coming on and making that possible.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
It's been a lot of fun. I'll talk to you real soon. Bye, Dad.
Alrighty. Love you.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.